I think we're live with 0 viewers right now.
Oh, good.
We can cut this afterwards.
How can you see the viewers?
There's a thing in the bottom, and we have 3 viewers.
Ah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the CivTech live Q&A with Historic Environment Scotland. I have Helen and Nick here with me today. I'll let the guys introduce themselves. Go ahead, Nick.
I'm Nick Thomas. I'm Head of Commercial Performance and Systems at Historic Environment Scotland. So my role is in 2 broad areas. One is looking after our commercial systems. The other part is understanding the commercial dynamics of our business, so the visitor numbers and the income and the business forecasting from that.
And I'm Helen Ord, and I'm helping project manage this relationship with CivTech and our, well, hopefully, what will be a fantastic solution going forward.
That's good optimism.
There we go.
I like that.
Glass half full.
So you guys, I have a few questions before we start. You guys decided to do this with CivTech, but I know that you guys have also did your research on what's currently out there in the market. So I'd like to talk to our viewers a little bit about, you understand that there's stuff out there, but why CivTech and why the stuff out there is not fit for what you guys are looking for?
Okay, I'll start and then Nick can chip in. So there are visitor counters out there in the market, and we run some very large sites. We know we've got very good visibility of the number of visitors going through, even profiles of some of those groups of visitors. But we have, you're going to get this wrong now, 336 sites across Scotland, and not all of them are Edinburgh Castle or Stirling Castle. There are Pictish stones, there are fields in the middle of nowhere, and we have to manage those as well as best we can. Some of them are very remote, in fact, many of them are very remote, and we have problems with lack of connectivity, no electricity. And I suppose in terms of those traditional visitor counters, if we have multiple access points, or not even an obvious access point, if it's just a Pictish stone in the middle of a field, a standard visitor counter ain't going to work.
Yeah.
You also have problems with standard visitor counters because that differentiation between cows and people, and we've got some sort of funny anecdotal stories of a sudden spike in visitor numbers at some of our sites, and then you work out that actually it was just a herd of cows. So I think that's where we're trying to look for something, or there could be a herd of visitors, absolutely. But we're trying to look for something that's a little bit more innovative, that is not just your standard visitor counter. And I know that Nick and his team and our conservation teams as well at HES have done a lot of research into visitor counters, and we've got a lot of visitor counters already at sites where we know where access points are, we know where to put them. So this is about actually looking a little bit more outside the box, so that we can understand visitor numbers. We can then start to plan, Nick can start to plan for our sort of commercial sort of plans for the future. We can also look at the conservation element of looking after a lot of these sites, the degradation of the land, of the monuments themselves. So yeah, that's a very long-winded answer, but that's, I guess, just
the other part of it is our existing visitor counters at sites require staff to go to those locations to download information, and if we roll that out at all of our sites, we don't have the staff to go and do that downloading. So one of the key parts of this challenge is trying to get a solution where the data is transferred back to a database centrally, but also from locations with no Wi-Fi or 4G potentially. So that's kind of, to me, the unique aspect of this particular challenge.
So in your experience and through your research, we could say that whatever is created through this, if successful, if it does what you guys are looking for, it will be potentially a product that it will be wanted for other organizations that currently use the current systems for visitor counters. So if this goes a step forward, the commercial opportunity is there.
Absolutely. I mean, I think most places have restrictions on headcount and staffing, and most places that are forward-looking want data. So, you take those 2 angles in particular. If you can solve those angles, get a good cost-effective solution out there, that helps people run their business and plan for the future.
And I know that Cairngorms National Park is another challenge sponsor. They have their own challenge out there, but people like national parks, they're going to want, they have the same kind of problems that we have with degradation of the paths, the erosion. So again, understanding the visitors, where they're going, and things is quite important. And I mean, we have our own little mini version of a national park, which is Holyrood Park here in Edinburgh, where we've got 4G, but multiple access points, huge, we believe a huge increase in visitor numbers, but just to understand actually really what is that, rather than just putting a finger in the air and making guesstimates.
Personally, I'm really looking forward for the 1st of June to read out the applications for this challenge, because I think it's one of the most challenging challenges CivTech has had. So I'm really looking forward to see the innovation coming from these guys and the products that these guys suggest. So we're going to go on to the questions from our viewers. We're going to be live on YouTube for the next 45 minutes or so, or an hour, depending on how many questions we have. If you have any questions, send them through to our mailbox. It's at civtech@gov.scot. We won't be checking Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or any of that. The only questions that I'll read out are the ones coming into our mailbox, so civtech@gov.scot. So I'm going to read out the first question for these guys. Could you please clarify what is expected by the term real time? Is it real time as in just after the visitor is checked, or the data is accessible remotely in real time?
Yeah, from my perspective, it's being able to access the data real time, not necessarily the moment a visitor comes to one of our sites. So it's the latter of those two for me. Yeah.
Anything to add? What is the threshold of accuracy required in the counting of visitors? For example, what quantitative margin of error would be acceptable, given the sites are different in nature and a solution may yield variable results?
That's an interesting question. I don't have a specific answer in terms of percentages and accuracy. I think the main thing from us is we understand how it can be calibrated, and making sure that it's a consistent like-for-like counting mechanism the whole way through its life cycle, so it doesn't change. So whenever we're seeing trends, we know those trends are on a like-for-like basis. So I think different sites will potentially require different levels of accuracy, but as long as we have some way of understanding what those are, I think that's probably good enough for us. We are talking about very, very remote areas with vegetation, livestock, etc. So we know there will be some kind of inaccuracy in that count, but as long as it's as robust as we can expect, I think that should be fine.
I think I'll ship in a question from myself, which is, out of all the sites, 336, I got that right. Do you have any indication on what percentage is unmanned and what percentage is without connectivity? And do you have any indication of that, or could you share that exploration stage, accelerator stage?
Out of the 336 locations, about 77 are staffed visitor attractions, and most of them have power and connectivity. So leaves 240 odd of unstaffed locations, but they're in such a huge variety of locations that it's difficult to say right now how many of those have 4G, potential for Wi-Fi or connectivity. I think it would be safe to make a rough guess to say the majority do not have any proper good connectivity.
Okay. Since we're on this, could you give us, so for example, I'll let you choose the example, an example of a real remote site with no connectivity. What does that look like?
Well, even some of our staff sites have no connectivity, so or very difficult connectivity. So sites like Inchcolm Abbey on Inchcolm Island in the middle of the Firth of Forth, we recently installed satellite broadband, which is really, really slow. So that's an obvious one. They work off a generator. We have Thrieve Castle, which is on an island as well. So you cross a river to get to it. So that, for example, the way we process visitors there is we have a till which runs offline onto the island. They process visitors on the day, comes back into the network and uploads the data that way. So those are a number of sites where we have no power and no connectivity at the site. But we sometimes, in some cases, have connections nearby where we can upload and download information and data.
What about sites where it is just a picture stone, say, in the middle of the Highlands, the Northwest Highlands.
They are what they are.
They are what they are.
They
yeah,
are literally fields in the country, that most people would walk past and not notice any difference. So yeah, bigger issues there.
And I think that's quite interesting for us as an organisation. You know, our remit is to protect and care for and promote the historic environment of Scotland, and that's not just those really obvious sites that we know we love, but it's also these other ones, and trying to understand actually who, in fact, maybe there are many people who are visiting those sites. They might be local, they might be tourists, but again, it's just understanding that, because maybe we need to be directing our resources differently.
Another question, is the solution required to recognize any details about the visitors, example, gender, age?
I think we're not too interested in, I guess, the demographics in terms of sort of gender or age. Our minimum requirements is what we've already described, really. If someone came up with a solution which had an amazing sort of feature add-on and sort of thought a little bit wider, and you could understand potentially where those visitors were from, whether they're local, as I've said, or if they are from Europe or from you know, the wider global traveling network, that might be interesting. That might be, but I don't. Well, who knows? Who knows what solution might be out there?
I guess if they asked, it's because they have something.
And they obviously have something in mind. That's brilliant.
Yeah. What range of self-sustainability is required? Battery powered should last for X months or years. And would the use of renewable sources of energy be acceptable given the preservation of the sites?
I think renewable energy sources would be preferable if that's an option. It's always going to be good to have that option. I think otherwise standard battery life expectations would be the norm, really. Batteries will run out, they need to be replaced. As long as they're at least of an industry standard, that should be fine for us, I would suggest.
Just to go a little bit further, maybe on the renewable options, we did mention as well in our write-up of the challenge that if anything needs to be physically attached to a site, we will have to get scheduled monument consent. And although it is actually Historic Environment Scotland who awards that consent, you know, we have Chinese walls within the organisation, so we would still have to apply for that consent, and the standard time frame for that consent to be awarded, if it's the proper application, and that all the details can be found actually on our website how to do that, is around 56 calendar days. So obviously that is something that we would have to consider. And if there was a solution out there that meant that we didn't have to actually nail something to the fabric of a monument, that would obviously make life a little easier.
Yeah, at the same time, it's the exploration stage and the accelerator stage will be the period for you guys to negotiate that with a company that is successful. And if it might be a case that in some instances it needs to go on the monument, and some other instances it doesn't. We never know.
Every monument's different.
Is the maintenance of on-site systems expected to be by the provider, or would the administrators on the sites arrange it?
I think that would this is a very woolly answer. I think that would entirely depend upon the solution that someone comes up with. There are 3 stages. There's the exploration stage, there's the accelerator stage when we come up with a minimum viable product, and then there's the pre-commercialization stage. And I think once we got to that pre-commercialization stage, if we had a minimum viable product that we were happy with, then we would start discussing those terms about maintenance going forward.
What standards and certifications should the solution comply with? And will the cost of any certifications have to be deducted from the development phase funding, or could such costs be covered externally to any funding to the provider? So would you guys pay for standards and certifications? I think this question is a little bit confused. So if whoever sent the question is watching, if you could send a bit of a clarification on what standards and certifications that you are talking about, maybe we can go a bit more in detail on that. Do you guys have anything that you can answer from what we got here? So
I think you're right. I think it depends what context we're talking about there, really, what kind of standards we're talking about. So if we know that, we can maybe answer that question.
So send the question through. If you can't send now, we will answer this question in any case on Public Contracts Scotland when we have a bit more information come through. What are the expected deliverables at each stage? In other words, what tangible outputs are expected from the exploration and accelerator phases?
Well, I mean, if someone comes up with a all singing, all dancing solution at the exploration stage, then happy days.
I think I have something to add on that from the perspective of CivTech. This is a different sort of procurement, so we're waiting for you to tell us what is the solution and how much you'll deliver, what's your plan for delivery. I'll give you an example for the CivTech pilot. So we had a challenge, as you know, the flood warning challenge, and the person that got through to the accelerator stage, on exploration stage, actually brought in a working demo, 3D printed working demo of their solution. And this is why we pay companies to be a part of exploration stage, so you can really go all out. So as much as you can bring at exploration stage is going to help you to get through accelerator stage. And then at accelerator stage, all of these deliverables will be negotiated with the company that comes through and with the challenge sponsors.
Yeah.
Anything that you guys want to add on that?
I mean, certainly, I think at the end of accelerator stage, we want to have something that we can make a decision. Do we want to support the company further? And see their business plans, and then how that might look in future. But
I think we have to be open-minded. It depends on the technology, it depends on the solution, depends how out there it is, how if it's mainstream or if it's brand new. So as you say, really, the more developed it is, the clearer, the better idea we have to help judge and critique these things.
Just a note, I've seen there was quite a few people joining in the last few minutes. We'll be live for the next hour. So you can send your questions, an hour or so, because we have a lot of questions coming through.
It started off as 45 minutes, oh my goodness.
You can send in your questions to civtech@gov.scot. So go ahead. What resources would be available to integrate and test solutions, given the remoteness of sites and existing systems used? So this could be financial, personal, staff resources.
I think, well, certainly during the accelerator part of the program, the funding that comes through CivTech, we would expect the accelerator participant to be covering their own costs. But if we were to go out and show you around a site, then one of us would be available to do that, or one of the HES staff, and obviously we would cover our own travel costs to be there. Other costs to be negotiated, I guess. Again, not sure what's going to come up.
And I think in terms of resource, it's the different kinds of resource that we perhaps require for this project. So the data side is one part of it. So my team would potentially be able to help there. The techie side, so how does the data actually connect, what the database look like? But also then there's the conservation side and also the heritage management side of things as well. So what can we or can we not do to the monuments to get these kind of in place? So I think it's a kind of a broad spectrum of resource is probably the biggest thing that we would bring to the process at that stage.
And I'm going to be sitting as the little linchpin in the middle, trying to pull everyone together and get the information.
Which is a very important role. Our recurring changes for the service, example connectivity, expected to be financed. Will the sponsor cover the costs, or is it expected for the provider to absorb the costs in their fixed accelerator fund? Would a one-off payment model be preferable to the sponsor? Again, the accelerator and exploration stage have set costs, and we're expecting the teams to get to an MVP stage within those costs. After that, there's a negotiation, and that could potentially be further funds available if you convince Historic Environment Scotland that it's worth it and your solution is good enough. So it's all depending on you, on how much financial resource will be committed up to the 100K limit of the contract. in the sense that you convince the challenge sponsors that your solution is good enough that should be funded through. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, let's go through the next ones. Does every site currently have some form of visitor tracking?
No. There's only around about 10 or so sites have counters of the unstaffed sites. We're due to put a few more of the traditional counters in around the Antonine Wall in the next few weeks and months. But beyond that, these unstaffed sites have very little information at all.
Okay. Next one, I think we already answered. How many sites have no mobile network coverage? Don't really.
Yeah, we need to do proper surveys to get that information.
Are there other metrics other than visitor numbers that would be useful / important?
So we've covered some, I suppose, the majority of that question earlier, talking about demographics and things. I suppose something else just to add to that is when we were developing the challenge, we also talked about visitor flow around sites. Now we took that out of the challenge because we think that is actually a much bigger challenge. It's a bigger piece of work, and there are companies out there who do research into visitor flow. They look at people doing the Hajj to Mecca, for example, and it is something that we're looking at anyway. Having said that, if there's someone out there who comes up with an innovative solution that both counts the visitor numbers, gets the data back like we need the data at the right time, and also helps us understand the visitor flow around sites, that would be great. But it's not the number one thing that we're looking for.
Yeah, and I think a basic level, being able to know the time of visit would be useful. So whether it's time of day, time of year, week, month, etc., being able to slice and dice the simple metric of visitor numbers would be useful for us to understand how people are accessing our locations.
Just as an example, actually, to throw in here, and I can't remember if we mentioned this in the write-up or not, Orkney has a huge proportion of our sites just in one set of islands up there, and they have some real pinch points, particularly when cruise ships come in. There are some sites, Skara Brae, Maeshowe, which have huge numbers of people wanting to go and visit. There are so many other sites around Orkney that very few people visit. Now that could be a case of just managing that better, signposting people the right way. But again, I think if our solution comes up with some way of providing data to help manage that, that's just an example that we're looking at.
That's quite an interesting question. Do you envisage different solutions for different sites? For example, the final solution may not be appropriate for every combination of sites.
I think that is a possibility. We have such a wide variety of locations that are very different from each other. It might be that there's a core product out there, but it's a variation of that product which suits different sites depending on how big they are and how many access points those sites have. So I think some probably variation around a core product would be what we might expect.
What would be a realistic price range for unit cost per site be?
Here's a question.
$1 million question. Oh, $1 million. No, please not.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can answer that right now, to be honest. Clearly, there are costs out there for the standard counters, so that would be our starting benchmark, I guess. So we'd have to see how the solution compares in a cost-benefit analysis against that standard solution as it stands at the moment.
And to go back, I suppose, to something that we said at the very beginning of this live stream, we're not looking for a standard visitor counter. And it could be that whatever solution you come up with, it's not even a price per site. It could be something that's nothing to do with the actual sort of a piece of equipment that's on a site. It might be something totally different. So again, pricing something and telling someone now what it's going to cost, that's for you to come up with.
Absolutely.
I guess.
And the innovators out there will be aware of the latest technology of Internet of Things, of the latest, cheapest mini computer that we can input. So I think they are in a better position to come up with the cheaper solutions out there that will work, that will be viable for you guys. Is there ongoing budget available for maintenance? Example, periodic charging of batteries?
I think it would have to be.
Yeah.
I think it's a realistic assumption, yes.
Are there any solutions in the past that have been considered and ruled out?
Nothing along these terms beyond the basic counters that we have at the moment.
Yeah. What are the limitations around physical installments? I think we touched a bit on that before.
Yeah, we touched on that. So anything that will actually physically touch the fabric of the monument will require scheduled monument consent.
Yeah.
And clearly the aesthetics and the impact of whichever device goes in the building will be important.
Yeah.
If it's huge and ugly, it may not get approval. So bear that in mind.
Yeah. We don't want to change the historical sites.
Yeah.
How do you currently collect data from the problem sites?
Problem sites.
Depends how you define problem sites. At a lot of our sites, as I said, we don't have any data. We make assumptions based on their location and their proximity to tourist attractions and population, and comparable sites where we do have data. Some of our rural unstaffed sites are opened by keykeepers, so we have some anecdotal evidence of what visitors go to those sites, but otherwise, most of our sites, we don't have any concrete data at all.
Would the solution be able to optionally use power and connectivity if available?
I don't
If
see why not.
available, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not make things difficult for ourselves.
Another one, what is your budget for each of the monitoring systems at each site?
I think we've answered that. Yeah, it's up for debate.
We have someone here saying that, hey folks, they love your challenge. And they're asking, what are the hardest sites to monitor and why?
Choose a site, any site.
Probably the sites with multiple access points, because you've got to look at who's coming in one entrance and leaving by the same entrance, and who's coming in via one entrance and leaving by another entrance. Yeah. Places like, as Helen's already mentioned, Hollywood Park, for example, it's a very big, disparate area. And that probably in its own sense is the most difficult thing to look at.
Yeah. Are you tied to a certain brand or format of people counters?
Not in the slightest.
Nope. This is why we're using CivTech.
Mm-hmm. How regularly do you report data to stakeholders, and what format does this report take?
We report on our key KPIs, visitor numbers and income, every week. We also report monthly and quarterly. So data to us and information is really important to understand how our business is operating.
And how about what format is that?
Various formats. We have databases, we have ticketing systems, we have reporting databases, and to say lots of spreadsheets as well. So we have different formats, and most of that goes into different reports for senior managers and the board.
And this is not a question that came through, but just to clarify, you will handle the collection once the data is in your, it's collected from the sites and in your systems. You will handle that.
The reporting.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Just on the data side, and just to say whilst we're live, well, Nick is actually quite techie, but in terms of sort of databases and that interface, unfortunately, our chap who is going to come along today is unfortunately ill today. So, but if there are any questions around that sort of more techie side of the databases, that interface, then send them in, and if we can't answer them, then we'll make a note of them and we'll get answers so we can get it up into PCS in the next week.
Yeah. Good stuff. How big a main point is the problem for you right now? And what is your current fallback solution? How big a pain point is this a problem for you right now? Is this affecting the day-to-day?
It's not necessarily affecting our day-to-day well-being or operations. But we are very much aware that we have a backlog of maintenance to sort out at our sites. We've had some budget allocated from government to do that, and we've begun a process to prioritise where that money is spent. So clearly, the more information we have to help guide where we put that money will help us do that job properly. whether it's from a health and safety perspective or a conservation and degradation perspective. The more information we have about these rural sites, the better.
Just a note to our viewers, we had quite a few people joining in the last few minutes. So you can send questions to civtech@gov.sc and I'll read them live and the guys will answer it. We have still some questions left to answer, but if you do have questions, send them in now so we have enough time to read them out. You have some sites where there are a lot of people in the area, but no one visiting the actual site. For example, the West Quarter Dovecote.
West Quarter Ducat.
All right.
Yeah.
Which is in the middle of a housing estate beside the road. Do you want this monitored?
Potentially. And I think that's up to the point of once we get to a solution stage, we can make a decision. It may not be that we put the counters or the solution out to every single site, but at least if we have an option, we can look at seeing where it goes to give us a really good representative sample about the visitors across our estate.
Yeah. What data do we need to collect? A minimum data example and a dream solution example.
I think we've sort of touched on that.
Yeah.
The main thing is the numbers, simple as that. If we can get things like where people are from, demographics, fantastic, but that's very much a nice to have for us.
And visitor flow.
Visitor flow, yeah.
The question for me, these 333 sites,
336.
All of these sites.
All these sites. All of these sites. There's a lot.
Is there a way that we can go online and find out where they are, what they look like?
Yeah, they're all listed on our website. There's a section of places to visit, and you can search geographically by region on that website, and you can look from there.
Yeah. We actually don't have questions through. We read out all the questions. We had a lot of questions, but a lot of them were repeated and short answers.
Yeah.
So if you do have some other questions that you'd like clarified, please send them now, and we'll still have some time to read them out. I'll ask you guys a question. In terms of organizational point of view, not so much the solution for the challenge, what are you expecting for your CivTech experience going forward?
I think as an organization, we have a lot of really exciting work that goes on and a lot of innovation that happens within the organization. CivTech is exciting for us because actually it's trying to throw things out there to people who wouldn't maybe traditionally answer a public sector tender. And I think for us to be able to have access to all of those other exciting entrepreneurs, companies, potentially research students, without actually having to go out and look for them ourselves is really exciting. And I think it's a way of working that we're embracing more and more now at HES. So it's going to be great to see what comes through. And at the end of fingers crossed, we get someone with a great solution to work with during the accelerator phase. And at the end of that, if we can have this pre-commercialization and take it forward and have this ongoing license that just, I'll say, revolutionizes how we count visitors, how we maybe look at visitor flow, if that's an add-on, that would be fantastic. And I like the element of the fact that whatever we're looking for, it's not just us that looks for these kind of things. There are a lot of other organizations out there who are using standard visitor counters. And I know people who've been involved with land management and national parks, and they quite often say to me, "Oh yeah, no, it's a bit of a pain that a cow walks past and it gets counted maybe twice. It's got 4 legs." So I think it's definitely got scope, and it's exciting, and it's nice to know that we can be part of that solution, not just for our sector, but looking more widely as well.
Yeah.
I think it would also be good to see what's out there that will challenge existing assumptions.
Yeah.
We all kind of work in a certain way. We all assume things are what they are. Maybe there'll be no real solution for us, but maybe there'll be some really cracking creative solutions out there. So anything that challenges the way you think about things, I think would be really good. So it'll be really interesting to see what comes out of this process.
And I think this is an area that is prime for innovation. The same system has been used for that many years, and the technology has evolved,
Yeah.
and there's more things that we can do with less. So I think it's a good.
I mean, you might find that the reason the same solution's been used for many years is because it's the best solution. But you know what? There might be something else out there.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. This is what CivTech is here for,
Yeah.
to find new solutions to old problems.
Yeah.
What level of error margin is acceptable for visitor numbers? We touched a bit on that, but the second part of this question is, does this differ from site to site?
I think it probably would, depending on the sites. The pure physical structures, their entrance points, all those kind of variables will affect things in some way. But we're open-minded, we understand that.
Yeah.
So as long as we know where we are and we can test things, that's fine.
Okay. You highlighted accuracy of data is important.
The same question.
How accurate as a percentage would be acceptable? Yeah, that we will find out. We're waiting for you to tell us what your solutions will be capable of and what predictions in terms of accuracy can you make right now. But the CivTech is a staged process that all of these will be discovered and explored with the companies that get through to the next two stages.
And clearly, the biggest thing that we already know affects these counters is things like livestock, long grass, and carrier bags flapping in the wind. So that's not down to a counter, that's down to the world we live in. So that's
and you guys have that experience that you can input to this product, which I think it's one of the main advantages of CivTech, is that you're creating a product that you can go out and sell it with the world. But you're creating a product with subject matter expertises that know what are the difficulties, what are the things that these kind of organizations are looking for. So it gives these companies a really good opportunity to go forward and then have a really thought out solution that really nails the problem in the head and really solves it. So it's a stage process, and some of these questions we don't know right now, but we'll all find out together going forward.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no more questions. This session was a bit shorter than usual. I think you guys were answering the questions way too quickly.
We like to be succinct.
So for our viewers, if you have some questions, send them now in the next 30 seconds. Otherwise, send them through to Public Contract Scotland, and we will answer in due time. Deadline for applications is soon, 1st of June, so I would advise you to send the questions sooner rather than later. And we have bank holiday on Monday, isn't it?
Well, for some people.
Yeah. Well,
I think we're working.
I have a bank holiday on Monday, so questions will be answered on Tuesday. Okay, we don't have any other questions, but I guess we can always get back to them.
Yes, absolutely.
So, announcement on, if you are watching this challenge, chances are you are kind of curious about Cairngorms National Park Challenge as well. So due to some circumstances, we're not going to be able to live stream the Cairngorms National and Scottish National Natural Heritage Challenge tomorrow morning. We will read out questions that you send into the CivTech mailbox from now until tomorrow morning. We'll make a video with the challenge sponsors, and we will put the video live at some point tomorrow at lunchtime. So if you do have questions about that challenge, send them now, and we'll make a video to answer them. It just won't be live due to some circumstances. We have another question that came through in the meantime. What will be done with the data? For example, analytics?
Yeah, we have a team of analysts who analyze our figures, use it for understanding what's happening at our sites, and helps us forecast our business and plan resource and expenditure accordingly. So it will be put in alongside our existing data and used accordingly.
This is an interesting one. The solution created, will this involve visitor interaction, or will this be accepted visitor interaction? For example, a mobile app.
It's a potential. I think if we're going to go down that route, just have to be aware of data protection. If we're going to be collecting data about people, now we have a great data protection team at Historic Environment Scotland, but it's just something to be aware of. But maybe there is a solution out there that involves that. Just bear in mind that if it's a mobile app, one of the biggest problems that we're talking about is the lack of connectivity, and that includes 3G, let alone 4G.
Yeah.
You know.
And we also have a visitor-facing app for our sites as it stands at the moment. So
Yeah, that's
there's
a
a
good point.
potential conflict there.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And that conflict could be, maybe you don't know how to answer this. I'm just adding to the question.
Yeah.
But you have an app that you currently use. Could these guys consider how they can integrate with the current app out there?
I guess that's a potential. We need to check of the existing IPR on the existing app and the existing agency that built the app for us. So there's that to discuss and look at. But you never know. It's a possibility.
Okay. Okay, guys, thanks very much. This is all the questions that came through today. The video will be available on YouTube going forward. You can watch it on catch up, as they say. Second time I use this joke. You can send questions through PCS as well, and we are all looking forward to seeing your solutions and seeing what you guys come up with. Thanks very much for joining. I'm Rui Cardoso, Helen, Nick. Thank you guys, and see you soon.